Welcome back to the PSB Corner. Today on episode 2, we will be discussing the pairing of the album The Supremes, Supremes A Go-Go, with the PlayStation game Gundam Battle Assault 2. Even though we will be departing from the genre of music that was featured in the last episode, we still find ourselves pairing it with a fighting game that has slightly different mechanics. Jumping into the album, we are going to one of my favorite groups under the Motown label, which is the Supremes. Comprised of members such as Diana Ross, who is lead in vocals, Mary Wilson, and Florence Ballard. Supporting vocals were provided by the Andantes, which were a female session vocal group that supported other groups in Motown. This album, being the 9th studio album by this group, ended up being the first all-female group to reach number 1 on the Billboard charts and staying on the charts for over 60 weeks. Rolling Stone was not favorable in its review of this album, giving it a lowly 2.5 stars, which is lackluster for the performance and power of this album. Surprisingly, this album consisted of a majority of covers from other artists signed to the Motown label, with examples like Get Ready by the Temptations and I Can't Help Myself, Sugar Pie Honey Bunch by the Four Tops. But the two standout singles from the album were Love Is Like an Itching in My Heart and You Can't Hurry Love. Love Is Like an Itching in My Heart starts with a straight 1-2 punch of kick-snare pattern on the drum with a simplistic bass line. The simple 2 bursts of horn that mimic the beat in the beginning add a whole layer of new depth that play along a binaural listening by playing through the left headphone. Then further into the song we have the xylophone bells add to the harmony of the backing vocals while matching the drive in the song. Into the middle of the song we have a solo horn section highlight that further expand the richness and overall feel of this song particularly. Moving to the next single, You Can't Hurry Love, it starts with a bass line that instantly locks my mind into the song Are You Gonna Be My Girl by Australian band Jet. Motown was a goldmine for some of the most recognizable bass lines and samples that have grown incorporated into the music scene today. We also have the cheery vibe of tambourine overlaid on top of the bass line that brings pace to the song. The vocals on this track drive a scroll girl flirtatious presence that almost mimic a scene of early 80s movies girl montages. You know, the ones of lifting each other up after a big breakup. As aforementioned, one of my favorite covers on this album is Get Ready. It takes a different spin because of the Supremes version. The backing vocals don't swell to the forefront on such lyrics like You're Alright and You're Out of Sight. It substitutes more of the xylophone and bells instead of the driving forefront of the drums on the Temptations version. It does lose out in parts with not having a bass vocal in the background, adding to a more full-sounding track. Some oddities on this album include the covers of Money, That's What I Want, originally performed by Barrett Strong, and These Boots Are Made for Walking by Nancy Sinatra. The cover Money for me has a surf rock feel to it, which completely grabs you out of the flow of the album as a whole, and the piano bassline mashup that shines on the original is overshadowed immensely. With a 12-track song list and overall running time of 31 minutes and 54 seconds, it is a good album to be able to pick up and give a listen through without feeling bogged down by the same style for longevity. Moving on to the game that is paired with this album, we'll be talking about Gundam Battle Assault 2. Originally released for the PlayStation on July 17, 2002, it marked one of the first original games to be released for an American audience first instead of being released in Japan. Bandai is the infamous owner and publisher of pretty much all things Gundam, so this game itself published by Bandai is no surprise. For those of you who are not familiar with the Gundam series, it is about battle mechs called mobile weapons, mobile suits, mobile armors, and mobile pods that are used for combat using various weaponry. The weaponry on these mechs range from laser guns to death scythes, while still being able to use each limb as a functioning weapon as well. It is well known for being a media franchise that has created many shows, movies, and buildable models for die-hard fans. The models as a kid is what really drew me to the series, but not only would you build the mechs you saw on the show, you then had a fully assembled action figure as well. The game plays out as a fighting game style where it is you versus the computer, or you can even versus a friend in the 2-player mode. Game features also a story mode called Street Mode in this version, as well as a time attack. Standard controls being able to block by holding back, with the familiar styles by entering certain button patterns. For example, quarter circle forward and quarter circle back. You have light and heavy versions of a punch and kick, which can utilize the weapon your character is assigned. You also have a dash that can activate a flying time so you can cross the screen above your enemy, and only certain moves can be done from this position. You have a special move, and instead of the gauge that builds up over time to be able to use it, you have 3 solid bars that you can use at any time during the fight. Some of these moves are unblockable, so they guarantee damage even if your opponent is blocking. You will find ammo that is used for when you fire your turret from each of the different mechs. You have multiple staggered health bars, and you know when you lose one by a message popping up on the screen that says overheating. Each mech has a range of different health, and it usually depends on size, weapon damage, and speed. 2 of my favorite characters come from the Gundam Wing, and that is characters Death Scythe and Wing Gundam Zero Custom. The pilots themselves are Duo Maxwell and Hero Yu. I know I'm probably butchering these names. I'm not very good with game character names. The game moves at a solid pace, not too fast, not too slow. Mech size and ability definitely plays a role into the pace of the game and how you approach certain battles. Wing Gundam has a laser rifle that can shoot projectiles across the screen, and if you're familiar with the fighting game term cheese, it's one of the cheesiest. Death Scythe really carries his own name and handles a giant laser scythe that is used more in close range, but does have a projectile form as well. The background modeling shows off full 3D rendered worlds, so that adds another nice layer of texture to this game. You could be having a battle from the city skyline to being on a carrier ship in the middle of the ocean. The soundtrack itself is something to not be overlooked, and it has many of the great opening soundtracks for characters and scenery. This brings me into the combination of the album and game together, where I see the happy, upbeat, go-lucky music, which is a staple of Motown, being shot into space or in the middle of a city with a combination of mechs. You find yourself bopping your head along while watching 2 giants collide in the middle of your screen. As I mentioned above, the 30-minute runtime of the album is perfect for blowing through a chapter or 2 of the storyline. I also enjoy the album because it can bring me to peace, especially during the tougher battles where you just want to throw the controller against the wall. Having to use the directional pad to pull off combos sometimes is just not responsive, and you end up leaving yourself wide open for an attack. Well, thank you guys for listening to the second episode of the PSB Corner. Like always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out my Instagram, punk.snugglybear, so you know what is coming up for the next week. Thanks so much, and have a good one.